Oh my gosh, you're still here. Part 6, that's where we are. This is 6 of 9 parts of the individual Audacity documentary. I'm Dee Williams. You've made it really far. I appreciate you. I hope you're inspired by my story, and I encourage you to comment, like, subscribe, all that great stuff. Let's get into it. Part 6, let's go. I went to Randallstown to my oldest son's first babysitter because I still stayed in contact with her. Hung out with her during the day. The neighbor downstairs was cool, so I hung out with them during the day. And they said, I want to introduce you to somebody who's in the neighborhood. So I said, okay. So we finally got an officer in the neighborhood. I said, that's cool. So I went outside, they introduced me, and I stood outside and talked to the officer for a long time, just about life, about things that were going on, and And so when it was time to go, it got dark, and I caught the bus everywhere at that time. And I was 18, 19 at this point, and I was ready to go home, ready to get the bus home. But my neighbors, the babysitter and the neighbor were leaving, and they said, you can't catch the bus home in the middle of the night. It's too late. It wasn't the middle of the night. It was like 7 or 8, but it's too late. This officer can take you home. And I said, no, I'm good. I catch the bus all the time. It's not not that big of a deal, And it's like, no, he can take you. He's like, yeah, I can take you home. And I was like, okay, well, it was like, he's a cop. And I thought, okay, he's a cop, that's cool. So it was like, all right, I see you in a couple of weeks. I was like, all right, I'll see you in a couple of weeks. And so then I said, whenever you're ready, I'm cool. And he said, well, I gotta run to my house and get something, and you can come on up. And I was like, no, I'm good. I'll just sit out here and wait for you, sit on the curb. And he's like, it's dark outside, you're not gonna sit on the curb. I'm an officer, look, I'm gonna show you my badge, that's my cop car. You don't have anything to worry about. Come on upstairs, I'm gonna get a few things, and then, I'll take you home. So I was like, okay, he's a cop. They trust him. What could go wrong, right? What could go wrong? So I go upstairs in his house, I'm sitting on the sofa, and he's fumbling in the back, and he comes out with an ironing board, and he goes back in the back, and I felt that feeling again, like, you gotta leave right now. And so when he comes back out again, he puts the iron on the ironing board, he starts ironing his shirt, and then he walks back to the back again. And when he walked back to the back, I got up very slowly, and I started walking towards the door, and I started to unlock the door. And when I went to take the chain off, all I heard was click, click. And he said, I'll put this bullet in your head right now if you pull that chain off that door. And so I turned around and I looked, and he was pointing a gun at me. He said, sit your ass down. So I thought, can I get out of here without him shooting me? Is he gonna really shoot me? Should I just run? Should I stay? He said, don't think about it too hard, because my finger is trigger happy. So I sat down, and he proceeded to iron his clothes. And then he didn't say anything much, really, to be honest with you. He was very quiet, but the things he did say were very condescending. But I didn't say anything. At this point in my mind, I was thinking, I already know what's about to happen, but I can't get to that door fast enough without him killing me. So he walks to the bathroom, holding my hand, runs the bath water, and I felt like I was 8 again. I felt like I was 8 all over again. Literally. And So he told me to take my clothes off. I already knew the routine. So I did, and he bathed me. And then he proceeded to take full advantage of me the entire night. So the next morning, I get in the car and he says to me, "Where's your driver's license?" And I said, "I don't have a driver's license." He said, "Where's your ID?" And I said, "In my wallet." He said, "Let me hold it. Let me see it." So I took it out. And he takes it and he holds it in his hand. He says, "If you ever tell anybody, I will run a check. I will come kill you and everyone that you know. Do you understand me?" And I said, "I'm gonna tell anyway." So he pulls over, pulls the gun out of his pocket, puts it to my temple, and this or this, your choice. I said, "I won't say a word." He started laughing. I said, "It doesn't matter. Nobody's gonna believe you if you tell them anyway." Ha 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 ha, and then get the fuck out of my car. I didn't even know where I was. He dropped me off at the bus stop. When I look back in the car, he was laughing. When I looked to my right, there was another officer there. So I started walking towards the officer. And I just thought, what do I have to lose at this point? And then he rolled the window down and tapped his shirt, just where he put my license or my ID at the time. He said, "Your choice." I just looked at the other officer. I just turned around. The officer looked at me and said, "Ma'am, you okay?" I said, "I'm fine." And I got on the bus. I got on the train. I cried so hard. I just decided, I think I'm gonna kill myself at this point. I think I'm just gonna, I'm just gonna kill myself. I don't even think I even wanna be here anymore. And I thought about my kids. And I wondered what would happen to them and all the things that I was working so hard for. So I swept it under the rug and kept moving.
So yeah, my feelings definitely changed about police officers after being in a situation where you thought you could trust someone and then they took advantage of that trust. I didn't know that cop before that day. You know, he was someone that was in the neighborhood, and you know, the people that I were there with trusted him enough to take me home because they cared about me, and he took advantage of that opportunity. I never forget, after a couple of years after that happened, I had held on to what had happened on the inside because he threatened me, right? Because he told me he would kill my family. He would kill me and my family. And so I'll never forget meeting another cop who was interested in me. And after he, you know, asked me about my age, he asked me how I felt about cops. Now, I didn't know he was a cop at the time because he was an undercover narcotic cop. And, but he asked me, he said, "How do you feel about police officers?" And I said, 50-50. And he said, "Why?" And I said, "Because I had a bad experience with an officer." And he said, "A bad experience or a bad experience?" And I said, "A really bad experience." And he said, "Do you mind telling me what happened?" And so I told him what happened, and that was the first time I had really shared that story. And he asked me the guy's name. Did I know the guy's name? And I said, "I only remember his first name." And I told him, and he described the cop. And I said, "Yeah." That's like, "Do you know him?" And he's like, "Yeah, he works in my precinct." And they've had tons and tons of complaints against him. And so much that they put him on meter duty. And I said, well, look, why didn't you tell? Why don't you guys do anything? And he said, because it's a code. And I said, what are you talking about? He said, it's a code. It's a code we don't break. He said, but we know, but it's a code. And that day I was so perplexed and I was so hurt, but I was also so liberated because I realized for the first time that that situation wasn't my fault. And you might be watching this and you might be saying, how could you ever think it was your fault? I thought it was my fault because my first instinct, my first mind said for me to take the bus home at the time. But instead I listened to people, friends who said, no, this guy's trustworthy. But my initial instinct said to take the bus and I felt like I should have listened. So after it happened, I really blamed myself for 2 years. I blamed myself. This is my fault. And after talking to that cop and finding out that this guy was doing this to other women and to, other things, I realized that it wasn't my fault, that this cop was just sick. But then once I liberated myself, I became angry. I became angry that the police officer that I was talking to and his precinct didn't feel the need to hold that officer accountable. And, it was accepted and they allowed him to think that it was acceptable. So I don't know how many other women he has done this to and how many other cops are out there doing the same thing. But if I could change anything, I would go back and I would risk everything and I would tell. So if you're in this situation, don't hold it in for 2 years. Tell.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for watching. I know it's a little intense. It's a lot, I know, but I really appreciate you taking the time to watch. We're about to dive into the next one. Are you ready?